I've always found tattoos like extremely cool. People who have sleeves or people who have leg sleeves or tattoos even on their neck or on their chest. When people do tattoos right, they always look super sick, and it always makes me just like more curious about a person when they get tattoos. So for that reason, recently I decided, well, I'm old enough, why don't I get my own tattoo, right? And so I was thinking about where I wanted to get it. Do I want to get it on my chest? Do I want to get it on my shoulder? Should I get it on my thigh? I considered my thigh. But ultimately what I decided on was my forearm, right? My right forearm. As you can see, I don't have the tattoo yet. But it made me think, because if I get something permanent on my body, I don't want to get, oh, I'm just going to get a flower because I like flowers, or I'm not going to just get a butterfly like everyone else, right? There's a lot of these cliches that people get just because it's popular or just because it looks cool, right? But me, I know that in the future, I'm going to be very particular about what I want on my body, especially as I grow older, right? And trends or, fads in the moment, they're going to die out. But so I started to think, well, I want to get a tattoo, but I don't want to get something where, I look at it in 10 years and I think, oh, that was so stupid. Why did I do that? Especially if it's covering my whole forearm, right? It's one thing to just get, a little thing right here on your chest, or, maybe a little thing on your back or on your leg. If you're getting something where it is always visible, basically, and it's large, it should be something meaningful. It should be something that makes people wonder, like, oh, I want to know more about that, right? Because a tattoo isn't just a tattoo, it's a conversation starter. It makes people interested in you. It says something about you as a person, right? Because if you have something permanent on your body, that means something. It obviously is meaningful to you in some way or another, right? And again, it made me start to think, like, what would be something that I could put on my body permanently that would truly mean something to me? And I knew, well, it has to be something related to God, right? It has to be something related to Christianity, because, I can't get something like, like I said, a flower, or, maybe a quote. That was another idea I had, and that might be my next tattoo, would be some kind of quote, maybe from Marcus Aurelius or something. But I was like, okay, it needs to be something about Jesus, because I know Jesus is real. I know his message, and that's something that I would never look at in the future and be ashamed of. And people, there's like kind of the regular ones that everyone gets, right? The crown of thorns. There's, Jesus on the crucifix. But I started to think, and I thought of, this verse, Matthew 16:24, where Jesus says, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me." And it made me consider what that verse truly means, right? Because I picture this idea of, getting a tattoo on my arm with Jesus carrying the cross with that verse inscripted under it, right? And I was like, well, if I'm going to get that on my body, again, I'm someone who's very peculiar, very deep thinker, very pensive. And so I didn't want to just, oh, that sounds cool, let me get it tattooed. No, I need to understand what something means if I'm going to write it on my body. Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. So what does that mean, right? This is what I began to think of. What does that actually mean? What does it mean to deny yourself and take up your cross and follow Jesus? Well, let's begin with the first part, right? To deny oneself, to deny our flesh, right? Everyone kind of has a different way of putting it, deny material things, deny the flesh, deny earthly desires. All these kind of things sort of mean the same thing, right? It's the idea of destroying the previous version of yourself, the lower version of yourself, the, less godlike version of yourself. All of these mean the same thing, right? And so that is what deny yourself means. To deny yourself is to deny, your impulses, your desires, right? The natural things that we want as people, that we know are sins, that we know are not good for you, right? Even if you don't believe in Jesus, this is still a message that you can understand. You have to deny yourself. If you want to achieve something, you have to deny the things that distract you from that goal. If you want to get big in the gym, you have to deny the bad food. You have to deny the complaining, the feelings of discomfort, the feelings of wanting to quit, right? You must deny yourself in order to achieve greatness. You must deny your sinful nature in order to get closer to Jesus, right? So that's the first part, to deny oneself and take up your cross. And this is the part that I really thought of because I pictured that image of Jesus carrying the cross, right? So to understand this, to take up their cross, what does the cross represent? Well, if we go back in time to the culture that Jesus is living in, right? You understand, once you research this time, the cross was known as one of, if not the most brutal, torturous, painful, filled with suffering ways to kill someone, right? It was the worst way of death. It's not, it's not an easy way of death. Like, obviously they didn't have like crazy firearms back then, but it's not like you just get shot. It's not like, something quick where it's just snap your fingers. It's a slow death. You're just sitting there, right, on the cross. You have nails, and it's torturous. It's painful. So then we think, well, what does it mean? What does the cross represent? Suffering, pain, unjust suffering, death. Right? All of these things are images of the cross, because that's what the cross was. It was a maneuver, or I should say it was a, piece of technology made to kill people, to make them suffer, to make them, hate what they were going through. So that is what the cross represents. The cross represents all of the suffering, all of the pain, all of the unjust things that we will go through on our journey in life. We must take that up. We must, lift that up rather than allow it to destroy us, right? Jordan Peterson, one of my favorite intellectual thinkers, has this idea that either you lift up your cross or it's gonna fall on you, right? Like, both literally, right? If you were carrying the cross, if it's a heavy thing, so it will literally fall on you. But if you do not take up your cross, if you do not voluntarily choose to suffer, if you do not voluntarily choose what you want to deal with, what you want to go through, life is just going to fucking destroy you. Life will destroy you. This is what happens when you don't deny yourself, when you allow yourself whatever comforts you want, when you allow yourself to watch Netflix all day and eat bags of chips and, do whatever else you're doing, take drugs, right? And I'm not acting like I'm perfect, right? I do the same things that everyone else does. I suffer, the same things, but it's a journey, right? No one expects to just instantly be, the perfect person, especially at my age, 18, almost 19. I can't expect to be perfect, right? But I'm trying to understand what he is saying in order to apply it to my life and become more like him. Take up your cross. So we know that the cross represents suffering, unjust suffering, death. So what does it mean to take that up? It means to choose to face it voluntarily. It means to confront suffering and know that it will make you better. So the last part of that, this little triplet that Jesus has, to deny yourself, to take up your cross, and lastly, to follow him, right? To do what Jesus says. There's no super complex, no. Jesus has a message. You must believe in him. You must follow his commandments. You must love one another as yourself. You must love God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. You must follow in his word. That is all he is asking you to do. So let's review, okay? Whoever wants me to be my disciple must deny themselves. So to deny yourself means to take your natural, earthly, pleasure, material, lustful desires and to deny them. To say, no, I don't want that. I want something higher more than I want this low, little thing that might make me happy for 10 minutes, okay? Take up your cross. That's number 2, to take up your cross. The cross represents suffering and death. So to take that voluntarily, to say, okay, I understand that I'm going to go through suffering. I understand that there's going to be challenges. I understand that life isn't always going to be easy, but I'm going to voluntarily face that and choose suffering, and know that the more responsibility that I provide to my life, the better my life will get in terms of purpose and fulfillment, right? And lastly, to follow him, to follow Jesus, to do what the Bible says, to follow his commandments, to love one another, to love God with all your heart, soul, and mind. All of these things are what we need to do in order to be a disciple of God, in order to truly walk in him, right? And again, it's not just about, not everything is just about being the perfect, God-like person. It's just about, being a better person day to day. It's just about living a fulfilled life. That's all this is about. You don't have to think of it like, oh, this isn't realistic. It's not realistic to deny myself. Who can do that? Well, that's kind of the point, right? Like, obviously, we want to be, we want to aim to be perfect. We want to aim to get everything right. But we also have to understand that we're just people and we're not always going to get this stuff right. This is why God had to write the Bible. If everyone was just perfect automatically when they were born into the world, then we wouldn't need God. But the fact that we do all of these bad things, that we don't deny ourselves, that we don't take up our cross, that it shows why we need God. Think about that. If everything was always, amazing, no one would say they need God. But the fact that we suffer, the fact that we do dumb stuff shows our need for God. It shows that he is needed in our life. Because without him, life is meaningless. Life doesn't have any texture. There's no purpose. So I ask that you take into consideration these three things that I just listed, and you contemplate how you can use them in your life to become a better person. All right? Thank you for watching. I'll see y'all later.